Welcome to Detroit's darkest times. Today's audio is about fallen brothers of Detroit City. In Detroit City, over many years, I've accumulated a lot of friends, a lot of brothers, a lot of acquaintance, and this is men and women. So I want to talk about today the fallen brothers of Detroit City. And the first one we're going to talk about is Mark Allen from Trumbull Street. He was a guy with many ideals, many suggestions, just an all-around good cat. And meeting him for myself was an experience. And what I mean by that is this guy just had a way about him that was good, And once you got to know him, you couldn't help but to like him, which many people did. But my times with Mark Allen was many times we'd hang out, party, run around, and a lot of conversations. And one thing about Mark Allen, there was never a dull moment with him. And he always had people laughing. And he met his demise off of Trumbull in Canfield. And I believe the street was Commonwealth in a garage. And this was his mother and father's place. And he would go see them time to time. He got an apartment on Hammond and Otis in Detroit, Michigan. And that's where we all had met him and got acquainted with him. And he basically, started hanging out with us. But he would go to his parents sometimes and stay over. And this one particular time, after we had, many encounters with him, and then we had many parties in different places, but a lot of parties at his apartment on Hammond. And one weekend, he decides to go to his mom and dad's. And I don't know if he met a girl in the neighborhood over by Hammond and Otis, or if he met a girl over by Trumbull. And the reason I say that, because he was single, when we all ran together and stuff like that. And but he had one weekend had went to his parents, and he met some girl. We don't know who she is. I don't believe none of us knew who she was. But anyways, him and the girl was decided they're gonna get some liquor and hang out in his mom's garage, his mom and dad's garage, and they had like an old antique car out in the garage. Maybe the car belonged to his dad, and they were out there and basically just partying together and stuff, and uh, obviously was going to spend the night there. And this is in the winter, I do believe. And they later they found them because they had the car running, and they had passed out. Both of them passed out, and the exhaust ended up killing both of them. And we didn't know this until sometime later on when we noticed he wasn't in the neighborhood. And, we went to his apartment several times. And then everybody was asking everybody, have they seen him? And everybody was like, no, we've been looking for him ourselves. And he just basically come up missing out of the neighborhood. And then everybody assumed that he went to see his parents. And but as some time went by, it was some weeks, I'm sure. And then his mom had came by the neighborhood and told everybody that he had passed away. And the way he passed away was they had the car running in the garage, had the garage closed, and the exhaust fumes killed both of them. So none of us knew who the girl was. So it was obviously he picked the girl up somewhere, either in that neighborhood or the Trumbull neighborhood. We're not for sure. Because his mom just said a girl. She didn't say a name or nothing like that. So that was sad news that we got about Mark Allen. Because you'd think that somebody like him would, the last thing you would think about is hearing somebody pass away uh, due to exhaust fumes. You know what I mean? So you'd think that people like that would be around for a long time because he wasn't an old dude. You know what I mean? None of us was old at the time. But that's one fallen brother that we lost as a group, and so he's missed. And then the next one we have is Kaz, and Kaz is a Mexican dude that I ran with mostly, but he has been in the neighborhood a few times around everybody else. But I have first met Kaz through a dude named Chief. And basically just partying and stuff like that and just meeting them like that. But when we first met each other, we had good vibes with each other, and we just clicked, you know. And actually, Kaz was a cool dude, you know. And over time, we ran together quite a bit. And I remember we was over in Del Rey, over close by his mom's old house, and we were in the park drinking 40s, and just sitting on a picnic table. And then he's telling me about this lady that he met, and she lives close to his mom's old house, and everything like that. So we're just chopping it up, talking at the park. Well, a lot of events took place, but the main thing is me and Kaz ran together a lot. I got a big job from his mom. She had bought a 2-story house right off a junction in Detroit, Michigan. She bought it from her sister. And in this 2-story house, she wanted to strip it out and then put new plumbing and new drywall and some carpenter work and stuff like that, just to fix it really nice. And this house actually had a basement, and then it had first floor, second floor. And Kaz knew that I had a plumbing business. So he was asking me, he was like, hey, my mom just bought this house and she's going to get some guys to, do work in it. And he said, you want me to ask her, can you get the plumbing job? And I was like, yeah, I'll take it. Just ask her and see what she says. And so he talked to her on the phone. And then he let me talk to her. And she actually gave me the job of doing the plumbing. And that was just to tear out all the plumbing and to replace all the plumbing in the house she bought. And so we had did that, and it took a minute to do it because it was a lot to do. And this was an older house, so we tore out all the piping, the exhaust piping, and everything, and then replaced it all brand new with PVC and copper. And then she had some guys do the carpenter work. And one dude I knew, his name was Larry, and he was a brother of a friend of mine named David Huffman. And he actually was doing, he might have did the drywall too, but he was doing the carpenter work. And if I ain't mistaken, he did the drywall too. But anyways, I had a whole group of us, doing the plumbing and fixing that place up. And at the end, it looked nice. And she got moved in and everything like that. And she's probably still living there today, right off Junction. And at the time we was doing this, Kaz was staying at the house. But then later, his brothers were going to move in, and then his mom and his dad, and they was actually still over in Del Rey, but they was moving in after it got done. But me and Cons did a lot of stuff together. We had a lot of conversations. And he got involved with some lady, and he started having some issues. And me and him had long talks about it. And I told him, I said, you need to be careful with this situation, because he told me that the lady was married, but actually he told me that the lady had came on to him first, because all she did was ask him to do fix something at her house when they lived in Del Rey. And then he said when he went to fix it, then she started coming on to him, and then that's how it all transpired. But anyways, he had a lot of different issues with this lady, and they were together for a good minute, and then he told me that one time they was at a bar, and her husband had came into the bar. So I don't know if he had somebody follow her, or if he was following her, or what the situation was. But he showed up, and Kaz and her, he called her baby cakes. Kaz, her, Chief, and Marge was together at the bar. And he had came up to his table and just told him, said, hey, if I catch you with my wife again, I'm going to kill you. And then he just turned around and left. Now, most people, if that would have happened to most people, I would say there would have been an incident right then. I mean, you know what I mean? But Kaz he wasn't no pushover, but he wasn't the type of dude. He was a big dude too, a Mexican dude. And he wasn't the type of dude that would start trouble or anything like that, but he wasn't gonna, you know, he wasn't gonna, push him around or anything like that. But most guys hearing this would say, if somebody threatened to kill me, it was going to be on and popping right then and there. So I realized that. But but this particular incident I'm talking about, he tells me that the guy did that and just turned around and walked out the bar. And I was like, what'd y'all do after that? And he said, nothing, we just stayed there and kept partying. I said, you weren't concerned with it? He was like, no, I wasn't worried about dude, you know. And but over time, they kept seeing each other and stuff like that. And then later on down the road, I hear that they found Kaz dead in his apartment. And I don't know the backstory on that or anything like that, but that's just what I heard. And so he had, lost his life some way in his apartment. So Kaz was a good dude. And, people hearing this story, they might say, well, he was messing around with a married lady, so, whatever happened, happened. But the thing was, if the lady had came on to him and then they started dating and stuff like that, my thought is that, She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew she was married, so my thought is she should have, you know, got a divorce and stuff if she was just going to keep getting serious with this dude that's my brother Kai's. And but I don't know, the backstory. I really don't know if she just thought she could keep on seeing him and then nothing was going to happen, or she thought maybe she just keeps seeing him that maybe her husband would go get a divorce. I really don't know the backstory on that, but I do know that she should have got a divorce if that's who she was wanting to kick it with, you know. So, I'm not putting the blame on her, but I'm just saying the way it all unfolded, it could have went a different way. So, I mean, because you got people that's from Detroit. I'm just talking Detroit specifically, but you got these people all over the U.S. and all over the world, basically. But you got people from Detroit City that's just not afraid of anything. So when that dude came to him and said, hey, if I catch you with my wife again, I'm going to kill you, and then walked out the bar, he just basically, Kaz just basically blew it off, you know. And not saying that Baby Cakes' husband had anything to do with Kaz's demise, but I'm just saying what Kaz had told me, and he told me this at Cozy Co's bar, and this is our oldest off of Liver Noise. And that was our hangout where we hung out a lot. We hung out at other bars, but Cozy Co's was a pretty high spot where we was at. And so he had told me that, and I just told him, you need to watch your ass, because just because that dude said that and just walked out the bar don't mean he wasn't serious. But when he told me that, it ain't nobody scared that's in Detroit. Let's put it that way. But when he told me that, there was concern. Just put it that way. You know what I mean? But not a lot of concern, but there was concern because he wanted to share the story with me. You know what I mean? And the only thing I could tell him, because he was my brother, my friend, my homie, the only thing I could tell him that, just be careful, man, because that can, go into a lot of different things. But the way I look at it is she should have went ahead and got a divorce if that's what she was wanting to do, instead of trying to, stay married and going with Kaz. But then who knows? I don't know the whole story. And usually there's two sides to a story. Sometimes there's three sides to a story. It's her side, his side, and the truth. You know what I mean? So all I know is what Kaz told me. But anyways, as time passed, and we did a lot of things together. We drank a lot of drinks together. We went to a lot of different places together, and we spent a lot of time together. But now he's no longer here, and he's missed, and often thought about. So, that was Kaz from Detroit, Michigan. one of my brothers that lost his life in his apartment. All right, the next guy is my brother from military, and his name's Michael David. And when me and him first met, I had got into a street fight with a dude. And that's when I first met Michael David and his brother. Many years back. But anyways, as time progressed, we started, hollering at each other on the street here and there. Then we started running around together. And then once we started running around together, then he actually started working for me. And then now we're working together and running around together. So we're with each other all the time. And there's been many times I've stayed at their house. They've stayed at my house and things like that. And so we've hung around a lot. We talked a lot. We did a lot of things together. He told me a lot of stories, like when I wasn't around, what would go on and stuff. Because I was the type of guy that I was in the neighborhood, but then I would leave out for a while, then I would come back, then I'd leave out, come back, like that, Or I was just in the neighborhood, period. But the times I was gone, when I'd come back, we would hook up and he would, fill me in on what's been going on and, what's been happening and all that, But me and him did a lot of things together. And he told me one story about he hooked up with this girl, oldest in military, in a second floor apartment. And he was actually staying with her. And at this time, he was dating a sister of mine, Sherry Soulsby. He was dating her, but he told me they had broke up, and then he hooked up with this other chick. He told me her name, but I don't remember her name. And he actually started staying with her. But at this time, he's pretty wild, and he's running with some wildcats. And he ends up getting in some trouble. And then he told me he had got arrested because he was with some guys. Then he said one guy, he said the police got after him. And then he said one guy told the driver to slow down, and he opened the door and dove out the car when they cut a corner. And that guy had got away. And then them other guys got arrested. And the reason they got arrested because they had somebody had a 410, sawed-off 410 in the car between the seats, and it had one of them armrests, you can pull down, and the armrest was lifted up, and the 410 was shoved in between there. This is the story that he's telling me. And so he said that's the reason they went to jail. And he told me the guy that was driving, if he would have just pulled over, you know, the worst scenario is they might have just got some tickets and sent on their way, And as long as they didn't search the car. But anyways, and the other guy didn't want to fool with the 5-0, so once they cut a corner, he dove out the car, is what Mike told me, and he got away. And this is many, many years back. But anyways, this is a story he's telling me, one of many. And then he says that they go to jail, and then now he's got to try to get out on bond. And he told me how much his bond was. It was a little high. Uh, and what had happened is he told me that he called his parents to see if they could get him out of jail bond. And then the bond was a little high, so they borrowed the money from this dude on military, this older dude that we all knew. And his name was Andy, the dude that they borrowed the money from. This dude was a cool dude. He was a big lottery player and stuff like that. And I think he had actually won I think the Powerball years back, and it might have been in Ohio or something. It's just a story I've heard about the old man, but I know he's an old lottery winner, but I think they said in Ohio a long time ago, something like that. But, you know, somebody can put it in the comments below if I made error on that. But anyways, this guy in the neighborhood, so his family went to him to borrow the money. But his family also had a lot of musical equipment. So they took the musical equipment over there to let them hold that to stand good for the loan until they could pay him back. So then they got Mike out of jail, and this is the story that Mike is telling me, Then they get him out of jail. So you can only imagine. I know his mom and dad, his brothers, his sisters. I know his whole family. But anyway, I know his mom and dad was pissed, because he went to jail, and then they got to get him bailed out. But anyways, he's telling me the story, and then he says he ended up going. When he finally went to court, he had to go to do some time at DeHoco in Detroit, and that's the name of I guess you'd call it the dorm or whatever. It's called DeHoco, and people from Detroit that's actually been there knows what I'm talking about. But anyways, he had to do time near, and because they had got caught with that sawed-off weapon. And he told me how much time he got, but I forgot, But anyways, he did his time, got that past him, and then that was the last time. He told me he did some other stuff too, but we're not gonna get into that because Mike was a good dude. He just at one time when he broke up with Sherry Soulsby, he just started running around with some cats in Detroit, and they were just up to no good. He was just running around with the wrong dudes, is what it was. But anyways, he gets past that. He ends up breaking up with that girl. He gets back with Sherry Soulsby. And this is a sister of mine from Detroit City. And I had first met Sherry Soulsby on John Kronk. And she lived over there with her brother her sister, her dad, and her mom uh, back in the day. And she used to walk around to Jim Pollard liquor store with her mom all the time. And I used to always run into him at the store. And me and her just kicked it off, you know. As soon as we met, we kicked it off. But like I said in my previous audios, I had knew Sherry Soulsby before I met Mike. But anyways, he gets back with her, and then he starts, you know, staying out of trouble and stuff like that. And then they start having kids and things like that. And and then, you know, he ends up staying out of trouble, and me and him were running together tight. And and then, like I say, I sometimes I leave the area, and then I'll come back and leave the area and come back. And the purpose of that was I was just moving to different neighborhoods, or I would like uh, go out of town or whatever, and then I would come back and things like that. But as time passed, and me and him had did a lot of things together, and we actually worked together, partied together, uh, got sick together. We did all kinds of stuff together, and you know, and we just had a lot of good years together, and so the last time I had left the neighborhood, and then this this girl from the neighborhood tells me that Mike had passed away, and I was like, "How the hell did that happen?" And then she said he had came up missing, and everybody was looking for him. And then she said that the kids actually opened the shed behind Mike's house where they lived at, and he was in the shed hanging. And that's how, you know, he met his demise. But still today, I have a problem with that story. But, you know, that's just me, and I might just be in denial. I don't know. But I just really feel like there's more to that story, you know. But that's the story I heard. So when I heard that story, I called his brother's house. And then Robert answers the phone. And I said, let me speak to Bob. Is Bob around? And he said, he's upstairs asleep. And I said, all right, just tell him. Now, at this time, my street name's Slick. But this cat Bob, which is a brother of mine, a friend of mine, it's Mike David's brother. He nicknamed me Buzz. And he's the only one that's named me that, you know, and the only one that called me that. But anyways, and that's because back in the days we partied a lot. And anyways, I told Robert, I said, tell him Buzz called, you know. And he said, who? And I said, Buzz. And he said, all right, I'll tell him, you know. And so after that, I was like, I need to find out more about this situation. So then I got in contact with a girl from the neighborhood. and she ran with Mike and Sherry. And I asked her, I said, first I said, if you don't want to talk about this, I said, I got a question I want to ask you, but if you don't want to talk about this, it's cool, I understand. And she was like, what? And I said, what happened to Mike? And then her response was, that was a long time ago. And then I said, all right, and I just left it at that. But that's why today I still got a problem with that story. I really think there's more to it that people are not saying. But that's just my thought. But anyways, Mike was a good brother, a good friend. We spent a lot of time together, partied together, worked together, ran around together. We did a whole lot of stuff together. And we was always together, basically, because except for the times I'd leave the neighborhood or whatever. But that's how he met his demise, is in his shed. So that was a tragic situation right there. You know. So, you know, and then later, a friend of mine, Bert Hicks, he lived on Hammond in Detroit. It's just one block from Military. And he was a good friend of mine. And I should have mentioned him before I mentioned Mike David. And the reason for that is because Mike David is the one who told me that Bert Hicks passed away. So actually, Bert Hicks passed away before Mike David did. So I should have said that one first before I did Mike's. But me and Bert had a lot of incidents together. And he was the type of dude, he was a friend in the neighborhood, but, he was just a dude that just couldn't stay in one place too long. You know what I mean? Now, he would come to the corner of Otis and Military when we'd be hanging out there, and he would come through, if he wasn't busy doing stuff, he would come through and stand and talk or whatever, something like that. But other than that, if you've seen him, it was just a quick process, because he was always doing something. But anyways, when I had came to the neighborhood and I went to Mike's house, and like I told y'all, Mike would catch me up on what's going on and stuff like that. And I asked him, was Bert still around? And he was like, "No, man, he got gunned down." And I was like, "No shit." And he was like, "Yeah," he said, he told me the story that he was in a high-speed chase with Detroit's finest. And he was in a high-speed chase, and he was in a car, and he actually slid around a corner, and he hit a parked car that had two girls in it. Now, I don't remember if he said, I think one of the girls, I think one of the girls died, and uh, one got hurt, and but then, I'm not certain on that. They both might have just got hurt. But anyways, he told me the story where he slid around the corner, his car hit the parked car, and it had two girls in it. So they either got hurt real bad or one passed away.